Hi, welcome to Quiet Law YouTube channel. Close your eyes and let the world grow still. Somewhere on this earth, a flower is opening in the dark. Somewhere, a tree that was old before your grandparents were born is quietly, unhurriedly breathing. Somewhere, a root system that has been alive for 10,000 years is sending a slow signal through the soil, the way a sleeping person shifts in the night. We live fast lives on a slow planet. And tonight, we are going to slow down together. This is a story about the living world, about the patience of ancient things, the quiet genius of plants that have been here far longer than we have, and the astonishing, almost unbelievable ways that life finds a way to hold on, to reach out, to endure. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Just breathe, and let the story carry you. We begin, as all good stories do, at the very beginning. Before the flowers, before the forests as we know them. In a time so deep and so vast that the mind softens just trying to hold it. Let us go back. In the coastal forests of Northern California, where the Pacific fog rolls in off the ocean each morning like a slow exhale, there stands a tree so tall that its crown disappears into the mist. Its name is Hyperion, and it is the tallest living thing on Earth. Hyperion is a coast redwood, rising 380 feet into the air, its bark the color of cinnamon and rust, its trunk so wide that a dozen people holding hands could not reach around it. It was discovered only in 2006, hidden deep in Redwood National Park, tucked quietly among its towering neighbors as though it had no interest in being found. What does it feel like to stand at the base of a tree like that? Visitors describe a kind of vertigo, a loosening of the self. You tip your head back, and back, and back, and still the top does not come. The tree simply continues, beyond where your eyes can follow, into the soft grey nothing of the sky. Hyperion does not hurry. It has not hurried for 600 years, possibly more. It drinks the fog through its needles. It pulls water from the soil through a system so complex and so vast that scientists are still working to fully understand it. On the quietest mornings, when the wind dies and the forest holds its breath, you can almost feel the stillness radiating outward from its trunk, like warmth from a stone that has been in the sun all afternoon. Some things, it reminds us, are simply allowed to be large. Let us travel now from the green cathedral of the redwoods to a very different kind of ancient. Eastward and upward, into the cold, thin air of the White Mountains of California, where the Great Basin bristlecone pine makes its home in the harshest soil it can find. The bristlecone pine does not grow in rich earth. It prefers the rocky, almost lifeless dolomite soils of high ridgelines, where the wind scours everything, where the snow lingers into summer, where almost nothing else will try. And there, in that severity, it has found a kind of immortality. The oldest known bristlecone pine is named Methuselah, and it is over 4,800 years old. It was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were being built. It was old when Rome was young. It stands today, its exact location kept secret by the Forest Service, twisted and weathered into something that looks more like sculpture than tree. Its wood so dense with resin that it has simply refused to rot. Bristlecone pines grow slowly, extraordinarily slowly. In a good year, a ring of new wood might be no thicker than a human hair. But that slowness is the secret. Dense, resinous wood does not decay. It does not invite the fungi or the beetles that hollow out faster-growing trees. The bristlecone pine outlasts everything simply by never being in a rush. There is a kind of wisdom in that, if you let yourself sit with it. Now imagine a forest. A trembling, silver-leaved forest of aspen trees, their white trunks standing in groves across a hillside in Utah. You have seen pictures, perhaps. In autumn, these trees turn gold, and the hillside blazes. But here is the thing about this particular grove, in the Wasatch Mountains, which scientists call Pando. It is not a forest. It is one tree. Every single trunk you see, all 40,000 of them, spread across 106 acres, are connected underground through a single root system. They share one genetic code. They are, by scientific definition, one organism. And that organism is estimated to be somewhere between 80,000 and 1 million years old, making it possibly the oldest and heaviest living thing on Earth. In spring, when the snow melts, the signal travels through those roots, and all 40,000 trunks put out their leaves at the same moment. In autumn, they turn and fall together. The grove breathes as one. It dreams as one. When you walk through Pando, you are walking through the interior of a single living body. Every step you take is on a surface threaded through with ancient intention. In 1994, a park ranger named David Noble was on a weekend hike in a remote canyon in the Blue Mountains of Australia, not far from Sydney. He came across a grove of trees he did not recognize, trees with waxy, fern-like leaves and a bark that bubbled and peeled in unusual ways. He took a few samples, almost as an afterthought. Those samples changed everything. The trees were Welwitschia pines, a species previously known only from fossils that were 90 million years old. Everyone had assumed Welwitschia was extinct, gone with the dinosaurs, lost to time. And yet here it was, quietly alive in a hidden canyon, fewer than 100 individual trees remaining, having survived 2 ice ages, 5 mass extinction events, and the entire rise of the mammals without anyone ever noticing. The Welwitschia pine is sometimes called a living fossil, though scientists prefer the term relict species. Its leaves have barely changed in 90 million years. Its pollen grains are identical to those found in ancient rock. It is, in some profound and humbling sense, a visitor from another world, a world we can barely imagine, still here, still growing, still pushing its waxy fronds toward a sun it has been reaching for since before our entire mammalian lineage existed. On the gravel plains of the Namib Desert, in southern Africa, where rain may not fall for years at a time, there lives a plant so strange that the botanist who first described it, Friedrich Welwitsch, reportedly fell to his knees and simply stared. Welwitschia mirabilis grows only 2 leaves in its entire lifetime. 2 leaves from the moment it sprouts as a seedling to the moment it dies. Those 2 leaves grow continuously, splitting and fraying at the tips over the centuries until the plant looks like a tangled heap of leathery ribbons sprawled across the gravel. Some specimens are 6 feet wide. Some are more than 1,500 years old. The oldest confirmed individual is estimated at over 2,000 years. It survives by drinking fog. Tiny pores on its leaves absorb moisture from the ocean mist that drifts inland across the Namib before dawn, collecting just enough water to keep the slow machinery of life turning. It does almost nothing. It does not flower dramatically or grow tall or colonize new ground. It simply persists in the place where it first put down its roots, through drought and wind and the slow grind of geological time. In the language of the Namib, it is sometimes called the tree tumbo, but among botanists, it is spoken of with something close to reverence. It is, in a sense, the most patient thing alive. Across the savannas of Africa and Madagascar, in the dry woodlands of Australia and the island of Madagascar, the baobab tree stands like something invented by a child who had never seen a tree before. Its trunk is vast and smooth, and often strangely rounded, as though someone had planted it upside down with its roots in the air. In the dry season, when leaves have long since dropped, the baobab can store tens of thousands of liters of water inside its spongy, fibrous trunk. It becomes, in effect, a living water tower. Elephants know this. During droughts, they will find a baobab and push their tusks into its soft bark to drink. The largest baobabs are thought to be over 2,000 years old, though dating them is difficult because they have no growth rings in the traditional sense. They are hollow inside, many of them, cool and dim and smelling of dry wood and old rain. In some parts of Africa, baobabs have been used as shelters, as bus stops, as storage rooms, and in one remarkable case, as a pub. They bloom at night, large white flowers opening after dark, pollinated by bats and bush babies moving through the dark. And in the morning, those flowers fall, their brief brightness spent, and the tree continues its long, unhurried dreaming. In the Mediterranean basin, on rocky hillsides above the sea in Greece, Spain, Palestine, and the islands of Croatia, olive trees grow that were already old when the Roman Empire was young. Some of the ancient olives of the Mediterranean are estimated to be over 2,000 years old. The olive tree of Vouvs, on the island of Crete, may be closer to 4,000. It still produces olives. It is still harvested each autumn by the same families who have harvested it for generations, their grandparents having harvested it, and their grandparents before them, all the way back into a past that dissolves into legend. The olive tree does not announce its age. It becomes gnarled, deeply so, its trunk twisting and knotting around itself over the centuries until it looks almost sculptural, as though the wood itself is slowly, continuously, dreaming of new shapes. The bark deepens into grey and silver. The roots push further into the stone, but the leaves remain the same. Small, silver green, trembling in the slightest wind, the way they have always trembled, filling the hillside with a soft sound like distant applause, or like rain that is thinking about falling but has not decided yet. And so we come to the last of our ancient ones for tonight, and perhaps the most quietly theatrical. In the mountain forests of southeastern Australia, the ribbon gum eucalyptus sheds its bark every year, not in small flakes or patches, but in long, dramatic ribbons that peel from the trunk in spiraling strips, sometimes hanging in the air for days before falling to the forest floor. What is left behind is new bark, smooth and luminous, in colors that shift as the year turns. Ghostly white in winter, pale green in spring, cream and yellow and soft orange through the summer months. The ribbon gum is always revealing a new skin, always in the process of becoming slightly different from what it was before. The forest floor beneath a ribbon gum grove is carpeted in these shed skins, curling and papery, pale as old letters. In the morning light, they catch the sun. In the wind, they lift and turn. There is a joy in this annual shedding that feels almost deliberate. A celebration of renewal that the tree performs alone, year after year, whether anyone is watching or not. And most years, no one is. The tree sheds anyway. The skin falls anyway. The new bark glows anyway, bright and new, deep in the quiet forest, under the indifferent and beautiful sky. Come down now. Come away from the canopy, away from the clouds and the high cold air. Let your attention sink, the way water sinks after rain, moving down through the leaf litter, through the dark crumble of topsoil, down into the quiet underworld that exists beneath every forest you have ever walked through. There is a world down here that science is only beginning to understand. And what it is finding changes everything about the way we think of plants as solitary, silent, separate things. The truth is that trees talk. Not in words, not in any way that makes sound, but through an underground network so vast and so intricate that researchers have taken to calling it the Wood Wide Web. Beneath a single hectare of forest, the threads of fungal mycelium can run to hundreds of kilometers in total length. These threads, thinner than a human hair, weave through the soil in every direction, connecting root tip to root tip, tree to tree, stranger to stranger. The relationship between a tree and its mycorrhizal fungi is one of the oldest partnerships on Earth, stretching back perhaps 450 million years, to a time before trees had even developed wood. The fungus wraps around or penetrates the roots of the tree, and in exchange for sugars that the tree produces through photosynthesis, the fungus dramatically extends the tree's ability to absorb water and nutrients from the soil. It is a trade, quiet and continuous, carried out in the dark. But it goes further than that. Through these same networks, trees share resources with their neighbors. A mother tree, large and well established at the center of a grove, will send sugars through the network to seedlings growing in shade below her canopy, seedlings that cannot yet photosynthesize enough to sustain themselves. When a tree is under attack from insects or disease, chemical signals travel through the mycorrhizal web, and neighboring trees begin producing defensive compounds before the threat even reaches them. Warning, traveling at the speed of soil. Scientists like Suzanne Samar, who has spent decades studying these networks in the forests of British Columbia, describe what she found with a kind of barely contained wonder. The forest, she says, is not a collection of individuals competing for resources. It is a community, a cooperative, and the fungi are its postal service, its telephone lines, its roads. So the next time you walk into a forest and feel that particular quality of peace, that sense of being held by something, it may not be entirely metaphorical. You may be standing inside a conversation that has been going on for longer than our species has existed, conducted slowly, steadily, and entirely without us. Now lift your eyes for a moment, because not every hidden thing is underground. In the dappled shade of eastern North American woodlands, there grows a plant called the ghost plant, or Indian pipe, and it looks like something that arrived from elsewhere. It has no green in it at all. Its stems are white. Its single drooping flower is white. It emerges from the forest floor in small, pale clusters, like candles that have forgotten how to burn, and then it fades back into nothing almost as quickly as it came. The ghost plant does not photosynthesize. It cannot. It has no chlorophyll, no capacity to turn sunlight into food. Instead, It has inserted itself into the mycorrhizal network of the surrounding trees, tapping into the web of fungal threads and drawing out the sugars being exchanged by its neighbors. It is not quite a parasite of the trees, because it does not harm them directly. It is more of a quiet thief in a busy marketplace, helping itself to goods that are already in transit. There is something dreamlike about the ghost plant. Botanists sometimes describe it as looking like it is made of wax or frosted glass. It has the quality of a thing seen at the edge of sleep, half real, uncertain, dissolving at the edges. It blooms for only a short time, then turns black and collapses back into the leaf litter, leaving no trace, as though it was never there at all. The fly orchid is another master of quiet dependence, though its relationship with the underground world is even more specific. The fly orchid of European woodlands produces no nectar. It offers its fungal partner no obvious reward. And yet the fungi colonize its roots faithfully, because the orchid has evolved to produce chemical signals that mimic exactly the signals the fungus uses to identify compatible tree roots. The orchid is, in essence, a forger, a highly sophisticated, evolutionarily ancient forger, speaking the language of the fungi so fluently that the fungi cannot tell the difference. This relationship extends above ground as well. The fly orchid's flowers are shaped and textured to mimic the female of a particular species of digger wasp. Male wasps, emerging in spring before the females do, land on the flowers and attempt to mate with them, picking up pollen as they go. The orchid has learned the look and the scent, and even the feel of a wasp. It has learned it so well that the wasp cannot distinguish the imitation from the real thing. And in that confusion, in that brief moment of mistaken desire, the orchid passes its genes forward into the next season. There is something remarkable about this. Not calculating or cold, but genuinely astonishing, that a flower could, over millions of years, come to embody such intimate knowledge of another creature's want. And then there is the dodder vine, which wants nothing so subtle. Dodder is a parasite in the most straightforward sense. It sprouts from the soil, and within the first few days of its life, before it has any significant food reserves, it begins to rotate slowly in the air, as though searching. And it is searching. Dodder can detect the volatile chemicals given off by nearby plants, and it grows toward them, toward the host it has chosen, wrapping its orange and yellow threads around the stem in tight spiraling coils. Then it drives small projections called haustoria directly into the host's vascular tissue and begins to drink. What makes Dodder interesting beyond its obvious drama is that it also moves information. Studies have shown that when a dodder vine connects two plants that are not otherwise linked, it carries chemical signals between them, effectively acting as a bridge between two unrelated organisms. A warning generated in one plant travels through the dodder and into the other. An unintended kindness from an undeniable thief. The underground world, it turns out, is not simply dark and still. It is full of exchange, of debt and gift and theft, of conversations carried on in chemical whispers, in slow molecular sentences that take days or weeks to complete. We walk above it every day without knowing. And beneath us, the negotiation continues. Let us come back up now into the light, into the open air and the mathematics of living things. There is a number that appears in nature with such regularity that it begins to feel less like coincidence and more like the universe returning, again and again, to a favorite idea. That number, or rather that ratio, is what mathematicians call the golden ratio, and the sequence of numbers that generates it bears the name of a 13th century Italian mathematician, Leonardo Fibonacci. The Fibonacci sequence is simple. Each number is the sum of the two before it. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on forever. What is remarkable is how persistently this sequence shows up in the biological world, and nowhere more beautifully than in the face of a sunflower. Look closely at the center of a sunflower, that dense, packed spiral of seeds. You will notice that the seeds are arranged in two sets of spirals, one curving clockwise, one curving counterclockwise. Count the spirals in one direction, and you will almost always find a Fibonacci number. Count those in the other direction, and you will find the next Fibonacci number in the sequence. 21 and 34. 34 and 55. 55 and 89. The sunflower is solving a geometry problem without knowing it is doing so, arranging its seeds in the pattern that allows the maximum number to fit into the available space, with none overlapping, with none wasted. The same principle governs the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of leaves on a stem, the branching of a fern, the curl of a new frond emerging from the soil, coiled tightly in what is called a fiddlehead, following the same ancient instruction that has been written into living things since long before sunflowers existed. There is something deeply calming about this, if you let it settle. The idea that beneath the apparent randomness of the natural world, beneath all the weather and accident and wild variation, there are patterns. The universe has preferences, and one of its preferences is this particular curve, this particular ratio, appearing in sea creatures and seed pods and the skin of pine cones and the arrangement of a rose's petals, repeated across scales from the microscopic to the vast. The passion flower takes pattern to a different kind of extreme. If the sunflower's geometry is mathematical, the passion flower's geometry is almost theatrical. Its flower is arranged in concentric rings of extraordinary precision, the outermost ring of petals giving way to a fringe of filaments striped in purple and white, which gives way in turn to the central structures of the flower, each element perfectly placed, perfectly proportional, perfectly symmetrical. When Spanish missionaries first encountered the passion flower in South America in the 16th century, they were so struck by the geometry of its bloom that they saw in it the symbols of the crucifixion, the crown of thorns in the filament ring, the nails in the stamens, the wounds in the petals. They called it the passion flower, la flor de la pasión, because they could not believe that something so precisely arranged could have arisen without intention. They were not wrong that something remarkable had happened. They were simply looking at a different kind of intention, the slow intention of evolution, selecting over millions of years for a shape that attracted exactly the right pollinators with the greatest possible efficiency. The passion flower's geometry is a message, written in petals, in a language that its partners can read at a glance. The lotus has its own message, though it speaks across time rather than space. In 1994, scientists were examining lotus seeds recovered from a dry lakebed in China when they attempted something almost absurd. They germinated them, and the seeds grew. Those seeds were dated at approximately 1,200 years old, making them the oldest seeds ever successfully germinated at the time. The lotus had simply held its instructions inside a sealed coat of extraordinary toughness, waiting patiently through 12 centuries of silence for conditions to improve. The lotus seed pod, that beautiful green structure with its open cells and its formal geometry, is built to last. It dries to a deep brown, its seeds locked in individual chambers, and it can persist for an almost incomprehensible span of time without losing viability. In Buddhist tradition, the lotus represents purity and enlightenment, growing from the mud toward the light, blooming above the surface of dark water. Perhaps it also represents patience, the willingness to remain closed until the right moment, and then, when the conditions are finally correct, to open completely. The proteas of southern Africa offer one final meditation on the subject of appearance versus reality. A protea flower head is not actually a flower. It is dozens of small flowers, sometimes hundreds, gathered together into a single structure that, to the eye of a passing bird or beetle, reads as one large bloom. Botanists call this arrangement a pseudanthium, a false flower, and it is a masterpiece of collective impersonation. Each individual flower within the head is small and modest. Together, they create something grand, something unmistakable, something that can be seen from a great distance and understood in an instant. There is a quiet lesson in the protea's strategy, that sometimes the most effective way to be seen is not to become large yourself, but to find others who share your purpose, and to build something together that none of you could have become alone. The protea does not know it is doing this, and yet the result is the most striking flower on the hillside, visited by the most pollinators, spreading its genetic material most widely across the fynbos landscape. Its beauty is accidental, its geometry is inherited, and its success is, by any measure, extraordinary. Now let the temperature drop. Feel it, a gradual cooling of the air around you. The imagined landscape shifting, the soft forest floor giving way to rock, to altitude, to the particular severity of places where survival is not given but earned daily, against cold and salt and wind and fire. Life does not only live where it is easy. Some of its most extraordinary expressions happen at the edges of what is possible, in conditions that seem designed to prevent it. And in those places, the plants that persist are doing something that looks almost like stubbornness, almost like will. High in the mountains of China, Tibet, and the Himalayan foothills, above the treeline where the air thins and the temperature can drop below freezing even in summer, there grows a plant called the snow lotus. It belongs to the genus Sorturia, a relative of the thistle, and its flowers are wrapped in a dense covering of white woolly hairs that give it the appearance of something swaddled, something protected against a cold that would kill most living things. Those hairs are not decorative. They function as a greenhouse. The woolly covering traps heat from the sun, maintaining a temperature around the developing flowers that can be many degrees warmer than the surrounding air. The snow lotus creates its own microclimate, carrying a small pocket of warmth with it the way a living creature carries body heat. And inside that warmth, it completes the work of flowering and producing seeds in the narrow window of mountain summer before the cold closes back in. The snow lotus has been used in traditional Tibetan and Chinese medicine for centuries, and it has been collected so heavily that many species are now endangered in the wild. On the high passes where it once grew in abundance, it has become rare. To see one now, clinging to a rocky slope with its silver halo of hair catching the wind above 18,000 feet, is to see something that has survived everything, including us, though barely. Not far away in altitude and spirit, the Himalayan blue poppy grows in the alpine meadows and rocky slopes of Bhutan, Sikkim, and the mountain regions of Yunnan. Its color is genuinely startling, a blue so clear and so saturated that early Western botanists who described it were sometimes not believed, because blue is rare in flowers, genuinely rare, and a blue of that particular quality, that cool luminous sky color, seemed like something a person might imagine rather than find. The blue comes from pigments called anthocyanins interacting with other compounds in the petal cells in a way that is extraordinarily sensitive to soil chemistry, to pH, to the specific mineral composition of high mountain earth. The same poppy grown in slightly different conditions will produce flowers of slightly different shades, from the palest lavender to a deep, saturated cerulean that stops people in mountain meadows dead in their tracks. It blooms briefly, a few weeks in the short high-altitude summer. Then the petals fall, the seed capsule forms, and the plant retreats below ground to wait for the next brief opening in the year when the mountain will permit it to exist again. For the rest of the time, it is simply a potential, held in the cold, dark soil of a slope that is covered in snow for 8 or 9 months of every year. Come down now from the mountains. Come to the coast, to the edge between land and sea, where the mangroves build their extraordinary architecture. The sea bean, the large floating seed of the mangrove and certain tropical vines, begins its life on a tree and ends it, sometimes, on the other side of an ocean. These seeds are sealed in thick, water-resistant husks and they float. They float for months, sometimes for years, traveling on ocean currents through thousands of miles of open water, surviving salt exposure that would kill almost any other seed, waiting for the moment when they wash up on a suitable shore and find purchase in the tidal mud. Mangrove seeds often germinate before they fall, producing a small green torpedo called a propagule that drops from the parent tree, floats upright in the water, and is ready to take root the moment it touches suitable sediment. They are born already prepared to grow. They carry their instructions in a form so robust and so patient that they can cross entire ocean basins and still arrive viable, still ready to put down roots in an entirely new place and begin the slow work of building a shoreline. The mangrove forest that results from these arrivals is one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth, a tangle of arching roots and breathing tubes standing in the water, nursery to fish, roost to birds, buffer against the sea. And it begins with a small, patient, traveling seed that crossed an ocean alone. Then there is the Banksia and fire. The Banksias of Australia are ancient plants, part of the Proteaceae family, and they have been living with fire for so long that some of them now require it to reproduce. The Banksia's seed pods, those rough woody cones that hang from the branches like small fists, are called follicles, and in many species they will not open at all unless exposed to the heat of a bushfire. The cones can sit on the tree for years, or even decades, holding their seeds sealed inside, waiting. When fire comes, as it inevitably does in the Australian bush, the heat causes the follicles to contract and then spring open, releasing the seeds into the aftermath. The ash-covered earth is warm and mineral-rich, cleared of the dense undergrowth that would otherwise compete with the seedlings, open to the sun. It is, paradoxically, the best possible moment to be born. The Banksia does not fear fire. It has incorporated fire into its life cycle so completely that fire has become not an ending, but a condition of beginning. The burnt scrubland after a bushfire is not a graveyard. It is a nursery. Within weeks, the ash is thick with Banksia seedlings, each one pale and urgent, reaching toward a light that the fire has made available by removing everything that stood between them and the sky. There is a particular kind of courage in this. Not the courage of resistance, but the courage of the seed that waits, sealed and patient, inside the locked cone, trusting that the fire will come. Trusting that what comes after will be worth the wait. And it always is. The charred hillside greens again. The Banksia grows. And somewhere above the new growth, the old, blackened cones hang empty, spent and open, having finally given everything they carried to the waiting world below. There is something the flower knows that we are only beginning to fully appreciate. It cannot move. It cannot be called out. It cannot go looking for what it needs. And yet, somehow, across millions of years of patient experiment, the flower has learned to make the world come to it. It has learned seduction. It has learned theater. And in some cases, it has learned something that in any other context we might simply call a lie. The story of pollination is, at its heart, a story about communication. About signals sent and received, about offers made and accepted, about the extraordinary lengths that a stationary organism will go to in order to reach across the gap between itself and another living thing. Every scented flower is broadcasting. When a rose releases its fragrance on a warm afternoon, or a jasmine opens in the evening, or a field of lavender shimmers in the heat, each of those plants is transmitting a complex chemical message composed of dozens or hundreds of individual volatile compounds, each one carrying specific information to the insects and birds and bats that have evolved to read it. Come here. I am open. I have what you want. The language of floral scent is one of the most ancient signaling systems on the planet. Bees, in particular, are exquisitely sensitive to it. They can detect floral volatiles at concentrations almost too small to measure, and they can distinguish between the scent profiles of thousands of different species with a reliability that puts our own sense of smell to shame. A bee foraging across a meadow is navigating a landscape rich with information, following chemical trails through the air the way we might follow a path through a wood, reading the signals left by flowers with the same attention and confidence that we bring to reading words on a page. But not every flower is offering what its scent implies. The bee orchid of Mediterranean Europe and the Middle East is one of the great deceivers of the botanical world, and it has arrived at its strategy through one of the stranger coincidences in evolutionary history. Its flowers bear a close physical resemblance to the female of a particular species of solitary bee, the furry, rounded lower petal mimicking the bee's abdomen in texture and color with an accuracy that continues to astonish entomologists. But the bee orchid does not stop at appearance. It produces volatile compounds that match, with chemical precision, the pheromones released by a female bee signaling her readiness to mate. Male bees, emerging from the soil in spring, often do so a week or two before the females. They are ready, eager, and the females have not yet appeared. Into this gap steps the bee orchid, offering exactly what the male bee is looking for, in every sense it can perceive. The male lands, attempts to mate with the flower, and leaves covered in pollen, carrying the orchid's genes to the next flower it mistakes for a mate. The bee receives nothing. No nectar, no pollen of use to it, nothing but a brief confusion. And yet the system works, generation after generation, because the orchid has learned to speak the bee's most private language, the chemical vocabulary of desire, and to use it with a fluency the bee cannot refuse. The Stanhopea orchids of Central and South America have invented a different kind of theater entirely, and it involves gravity. Most flowers are arranged to present themselves upward, toward the sky, toward the insects and birds that approach from above. The Stanhopea does the opposite. It blooms downward, its flowers hanging on long, pendulous spikes that push down through the basket or branch from which the plant grows, dangling in midair beneath the foliage. The flowers themselves are extraordinary, complex and waxy, often in shades of cream and orange and purple, strongly fragrant, and they last only 2 or 3 days before they fall. The Stanhopeia has evolved specifically for male orchid bees, which collect the flower's aromatic compounds to use in their own courtship displays. The bee hovers at the hanging flower, gathering scent, and the flower's architecture is arranged so that in doing so, the bee inevitably makes contact with the pollen masses, carrying them away to the next bloom. The entire structure of the flower, its inverted orientation, its brief life, its intense fragrance, exists to maximize this precise moment of contact with this precise bee in this precise way. It is an extravagant investment in a very specific relationship. But specificity, in the world of orchid pollination, is often the point. The lady's slipper orchid takes a more architectural approach to deception. Its lower petal forms a deep, rounded pouch, a slipper-shaped trap, brightly colored and slightly translucent, with an opening at the top just wide enough to admit a bee. The bee, attracted by color and mild scent, enters the pouch and immediately finds it difficult to leave. The inner walls are smooth and angled in such a way that the bee cannot climb back out the way it came in. It slides deeper into the pouch, growing more agitated, until it finds the single exit route the orchid has provided, a narrow passage that leads past the pollen-bearing structures, dusting the bee thoroughly before releasing it into the open air. The bee has received nothing. No nectar rewards the visit. No useful pollen is available. The lady's slipper has simply built a trap clever enough to catch a bee, use it, and release it, and the bee, having once been caught, rarely enters the same flower twice. The orchid relies on new bees arriving constantly, each one making the same mistake, each one leaving carrying the genetic cargo forward. Not all attraction strategies are built on deception. The heliconia, whose flowers are sometimes called lobster claws for the dramatic red and yellow bracts that enclose their blossoms, operates on pure abundance. Its flowers produce nectar in such extraordinary quantities that they become a reliable destination for the hummingbirds that pollinate them. The curved, angled bracts are shaped precisely to match the curve of a hummingbird's bill, so that when the bird hovers and probes for nectar, its head and throat make contact with the pollen in exactly the right way. The heliconia does not deceive. It offers something genuine and valuable, and it has shaped itself around the body of its partner so completely that the two have effectively co-evolved, each influencing the other's form over millions of years into a fit, so precise it resembles something that was designed. And then there is the blue diamond orchid, Vanda coeruleia, the orchid that produces what many botanists consider the closest thing the plant kingdom has to a true blue flower. Not purple blue or mauve blue or violet with blue undertones, but a clear, saturated, unambiguous blue, the blue of deep sky, of still water and shadow, of something precious and difficult to explain. It grows in the oak and rhododendron forests of northeast India, Myanmar, and Thailand, at altitudes above 3,000 feet, blooming in autumn when the surrounding forest is beginning to thin and cool. To see it growing wild, which is increasingly rare due to overharvesting for the horticultural trade, is described by those who have done so as a kind of arrested moment. A stopping of the internal chatter. A simple, sustained looking. The blue diamond orchid is endangered. It is protected under international law. Its cultivation is carefully managed, and it has become one of the parent species of many hybrid orchids grown in homes and gardens around the world. Its extraordinary color passed on to generations of flowers that will never know the oak forest or the autumn highland air. What it does in the wild, pollinated by bees that visit its flat, open flowers, is simply exist in its particular color, in its particular forest, at its particular altitude, doing what flowers do, being exactly as beautiful as it needs to be to carry itself forward. Let us pause here, in this story, and speak of patience. Not the patience of the baobab storing water for a decade. Not the patience of the bristlecone pine, adding a hair's width of wood each year. A different kind of patience. The patience of something waiting. Still. Attentive. Capable of speed when speed is finally required. The carnivorous plants occupy a very specific ecological niche. The bogs and heathlands and nutrient-poor soils where the ground offers almost nothing in the way of nitrogen or phosphorus, the raw materials of growth. In response to this deprivation, some plants, over millions of years, have turned to a different source. Not the soil, the air, or more precisely, the living things that move through it. The Venus flytrap grows only in a small region of the coastal plain of North and South Carolina, in the longleaf pine savannas and boggy seeps of that particular corner of the world, and nowhere else on Earth. Its leaves are hinged, edged with stiff interlocking teeth, and on the inner surface of each lobe are tiny trigger hairs. The trap will not close for a single touch. It requires 2 touches within about 20 seconds, or 1 touch followed by another, and this requirement is not accidental. It is a filter, a mechanism to avoid wasting energy closing on a raindrop or a falling leaf, or anything that is not what it is looking for. When an insect touches the first trigger hair, a small electrical charge is generated and held. If nothing more happens, the charge dissipates and the trap resets. But if a second touch follows, the charge is completed, and the trap snaps shut in a fraction of a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom, its teeth interlocking to form a cage from which a struggling insect cannot escape. Then the real patience begins. The sealed trap floods with digestive enzymes. The meal is absorbed over 10 to 14 days. Then the trap opens again, the indigestible remains blown away by wind or rain, and the leaf resets for the next visitor. There is something hypnotic about watching a Venus flytrap in its open, waiting state. The leaves spread wide, green and faintly rosy at the center where the trigger hairs sit, still as stone. Flies pass nearby and ignore it. A beetle wanders close and turns away. The trap waits, patient as a stone, accumulating nothing, expending nothing, simply existing in a state of readiness that could last for hours, for days, for as long as it takes. The sundew, by contrast, does not snap. It does not move quickly at all. It simply shines. Sundews are among the most widely distributed carnivorous plants in the world, found on every continent except Antarctica, in bogs and fens, and wet heathlands from the Arctic Circle to the tropics. Their leaves are covered in long, reddish glandular hairs, each one tipped with a glistening drop of sticky mucilage that catches the light like a dewdrop. In the morning, when the sun is low and the light is raking, a bed of sundews can look like something scattered with jewels, each point of light holding its place while the real dew evaporates away. An insect lands to investigate, drawn by the sparkle, by the faint sweet scent the sundew produces. Its legs stick immediately. It struggles, and in struggling, makes contact with more hairs. The hairs begin, very slowly, to bend inward, curling around the insect over the course of minutes or hours, the leaf itself folding gradually into a cup that maximizes contact between the prey and the digestive glands at the base of the hairs. The sundew does not hurry. It does not need to. Once you have touched it, the outcome is determined. The pitcher plants have arrived at their solution through architecture. Their leaves have evolved into deep, fluid-filled chambers, the opening ringed with a slippery rim called the peristome, which insects cannot grip, and sheltered by a lid that prevents dilution by rain. The fluid at the bottom is not simply water. It is a biochemical soup of digestive enzymes, and in some species, microorganisms that assist in breaking down the prey. The pitcher advertises itself with color, with scent, sometimes with nectar glands around the rim, drawing insects to what appears to be a rich food source, and which turns out to be a one-way door. Some pitcher plants have developed additional relationships. In Borneo, certain species of nepenthes have evolved to accommodate tree shrews, which feed on the nectar secreted on the lid of the pitcher, and, in doing so, defecate into the pitcher, providing it with a direct delivery of nitrogen-rich material. The plant feeds the shrew feeds the plant. Another negotiation, conducted in the green interior of a cloud forest, between partners who do not know they are partners. And then there is Nepenthes roger, which is something else entirely. Nepenthes roger grows only on the slopes of Mount Kinabalu and a few neighboring peaks in the Malaysian state of Sabah, at altitudes above 1,500 meters. Its pitchers are the largest of any carnivorous plant in the world, capable of holding 3.5 liters of digestive fluid, roughly the volume of a large bottle of water. They are wide enough that small vertebrates have occasionally been found inside them, rats and frogs and lizards that fell in and could not escape. The pitchers hang on stout tendrils from the leaves of a vine that can reach several meters in length. They are deep burgundy and green. Their interiors a slick, glossy curve of treacherous surface, the fluid within dark and opaque. They look, in the misty highland forest where they grow, like something left behind by a larger world, like objects from a scale of life that does not quite belong to the one we inhabit. Nepenthes roger does not hurry either. It grows slowly, in poor soil, in cool mist, investing its patient energy into the construction of these extraordinary vessels one at a time, each one taking weeks to develop, each one opening eventually to the forest air and beginning its long vigil. The forest moves around them. The mist comes and goes. The pitchers hang still, full of dark water, waiting with a thoroughness that is difficult to look away from. Slowly now, let the pace of this change the way light changes at the end of a long afternoon. Not all at once, but gradually, the quality of the air shifting, the edges softening, the world beginning its transition into something quieter and more mysterious than the bright day that came before. The night is not an absence. It is a different presence. And in the world of flowers, the night belongs to a different cast of characters entirely, ones that have been sleeping all day, folded and still, waiting for the sun to withdraw before they begin their own unhurried performances. In the tropical rainforest, there is no single dramatic moment of dusk the way there is in temperate latitudes. The light simply begins to fail, filtering down through the canopy in diminishing shafts, and the forest changes around you in ways that are more felt than seen. The diurnal insects and birds grow quiet. The temperature drops by a degree or two. And then in the growing dark, other things begin to stir. Moths emerge from their resting places in the bark and leaf litter, testing the air with their antennae, following invisible chemical trails toward flowers that have been closed all day and are only now, in the cooling dusk, beginning to release their nocturnal fragrances. Bats wake and begin their sonar-guided foraging. Small mammals that spend the day in burrows or hollows emerge into the moon-touched undergrowth. The night shift begins, and the flowers that serve it have shaped themselves to be found in the dark. Nocturnal flowers tend to be white or pale yellow, not because they lack the pigmentation for brighter colors, but because in low light, colors cannot be seen. Only brightness, only contrast against the dark, remains visible. A white flower glows in moonlight. A red flower disappears. Evolution has dressed the night-blooming flowers in the colors that are useful to them. The same way it has given everything else in this story exactly what it needs and nothing more. On trellises and fences and the walls of houses across the tropics and subtropics, the moonflower vine waits through the heat of the day with its flowers tightly closed. Smooth white spirals wound against the light like sleeping things. Then, as the sun descends and the air begins to cool, something changes in the flower's chemistry. The petals respond to the dropping temperature and the fading light, and they begin to open. It is slow enough to watch if you know when to look. The spiral unwinds, the petals separate and spread, and within the space of perhaps 30 minutes the flower has opened fully into a wide, luminous disk of white, 5 to 6 inches across, releasing a fragrance described variously as sweet, spicy, and deeply calming. By morning it will be closed again, the petals wilting, the day having arrived with its heat and its brightness and its indifference to the moonflower's preferences. But for the hours between dusk and dawn, it is fully open, fully present, fully itself. The night-scented stalk is less dramatic in its appearance. Its small, 4-petaled flowers in shades of pale lilac and white close during the day, and look frankly rather dull compared to the showier flowers of the garden around it. Gardeners sometimes plant it without knowing what they are doing, and feel faintly disappointed in the result. Then evening comes. The fragrance released by night-scented stock after dark is something botanical writers have struggled to adequately describe for centuries. It is sweet, yes, but with a complexity that goes beyond sweetness, a spice underneath, a depth, something that seems to come from a source larger than the small pale flower responsible for it. It is a smell that moves people, that makes them stop in gardens at dusk and look around, trying to locate its source, drawn by something they cannot quite name. The moths can name it, or rather they can follow it, and they do, navigating through the night garden to the precisely located source of that signal, doing the work the flower needs them to do. The evening primrose has its own quiet precision. Its bright yellow flowers open in the evening, each one completing its opening in a matter of minutes, as though the flower is unwinding from a coil of stored potential, releasing its petals into the cooling air in a continuous unfolding that is, if you are patient enough to watch it, genuinely beautiful. The opening is triggered by a drop in light levels, measured by photoreceptors in the petals themselves. The flower is its own timepiece, reading the fading day and acting on what it reads. By morning, the previous evening's flowers are already fading, their yellow turning papery and pale, their moment past. But new buds are waiting, and the next evening they will open in turn. The same small performance repeated along the spike of the plant, night after night through the summer. The 4 o'clock flower, Mirabilis jaloppa, keeps its own schedule with such reliability that in some parts of the world it has been used as an informal timepiece by people who live close to the land. Its flowers open at roughly 4 in the afternoon and close again by morning, giving the plant its common name and a personality that feels almost punctual, almost domestic. There is something endearing about a flower that can be trusted to be open when you go to check on it, that has built its hours into its biology and adheres to them through all weathers and seasons. The flowers come in extraordinary variety, red and yellow and white and pink and striped, sometimes with 2 or 3 colors on a single plant, occasionally with 2 or 3 colors on a single flower. They are pollinated by sphinx moths and hawk moths, whose long tongues can reach the nectar at the base of the flower's long tube. And they are generous. A healthy 4 o'clock plant will produce flowers every evening from midsummer well into autumn, patient and reliable, opening its colors to the dusk with a consistency that seems almost like devotion. The angel's trumpet, Brugmansia, fills the night with something heavier and more solemn. Its flowers hang downward, enormous trumpets of white or pale yellow or soft peach, sometimes a foot long, swaying gently in the evening air with a weight and a silence that gives the plant a quality of solemnity. They open most fully after dark, releasing a fragrance that is sweet and rich and slightly narcotic in quality, heavy enough in enclosed spaces to cause drowsiness. There is a wildness to the angel's trumpet that its garden cultivation somewhat obscures. In the Andean regions of South America, where its wild relatives grew before it was domesticated, it was used in shamanic practice, its alkaloids known to produce powerful altered states. The name Brugmansia contains within it the history of both reverence and danger. It is a plant that has been handled carefully, across centuries, by people who understood that something this beautiful, this fragrant, this generous in its nightly opening, carried within it a chemical language that demanded respect. In the garden on a warm evening, though, with the flowers swaying in the light of a low moon, it is simply extraordinary, simply one of the most beautiful things the night has to offer. And then in the desert, in the silence that is deeper than any other silence, there is a flower that blooms once a year, for a single night, and never again until the next year comes. The night-blooming cereus, sometimes called the queen of the night, is a cactus, an unlikely-looking one, its flattened stems growing in tangles that look dead for most of the year, dry and grey and thoroughly uninspiring. It grows in the Sonoran Desert of the American Southwest, and in gardens around the world where people have learned its secret and planted it knowing they will be rewarded eventually, if they are patient enough, if they remember to watch. On one night each summer, triggered by a combination of heat and moon phase and other cues that researchers are still working to fully understand, the queen of the night opens its flowers. They emerge from the stem in the late afternoon, long tubular buds that have been building for weeks, and as the desert cools and the stars appear, they open into enormous white blossoms 6 inches wide, with a fragrance so pure and so powerful that it carries across the dark desert for hundreds of meters, drawing the sphinx moths and bats that pollinate it from a great distance. By sunrise, the flowers are closed and beginning to wither. The next night they are gone. The plant returns to its grey, unremarkable appearance, its secret kept for another year. In towns and neighborhoods across the desert southwest, when the word goes out that the cereus is blooming, people come. They bring lawn chairs and blankets and thermoses of tea, and they sit in gardens in the warm desert night, watching together, talking quietly, waiting. It is a communal vigil, an informal festival organized by a cactus, and it brings people out into the dark and the cool and the star-filled sky together, something that would not happen without the flower. The night-blooming cereus does not know it does this. It knows nothing except its own chemistry, its own timing, its own single dazzling night of openness before it closes again. But we come. We come with our chairs and our quiet voices and our faces turned up to the blooming, standing together in the dark, held briefly in the attention of something that will not stay. And for that one night, in the wide and breathing dark of the desert, that is enough. There are flowers in this world that do not want to be loved. Not in the way the moonflower wants to be loved, opening white and fragrant to the cooling dusk. Not in the way the blue diamond orchid wants to be loved, burning its impossible color into the eyes of whoever finds it in the mountain forest. Some flowers have made a different calculation entirely. Some flowers have decided that what they need is not admiration, but something older and more primal. Something that arrives not on the wing, but crawling. Something that is drawn not to beauty, but to its opposite. These are the flowers of heat and decay, and they are among the strangest things alive. The dragon arum grows around the Mediterranean, in the rocky scrub and dry hillsides of Greece and the surrounding islands, and for most of the year it is invisible. It lives underground as a large corm, a dense storage organ buried in the stony earth, accumulating energy through seasons of patient photosynthesis before it decides, in some interior calculation we cannot follow, that it is time. When the dragon arum emerges, it does so with drama. A deep maroon spather, the hooded bract that surrounds the flower spike, rises from the earth and unfurls to reveal a dark, almost black spadix inside, a thick upright spike surrounded at its base by the actual flowers, which are tiny and inconspicuous compared to the architecture that surrounds them. The spather is the color of old blood, marked with irregular pale streaks. The whole structure can reach 1.5 feet in height. It looks, in the rocky Mediterranean scrub, like something that arrived from elsewhere. Then it generates heat. The spadix warms itself through a process called thermogenesis, burning stored carbohydrates to raise its temperature as much as 15 degrees above the surrounding air. And as it heats, it releases its fragrance, which is not a fragrance so much as an assault. The dragon arum smells powerfully, unmistakably, of rotting meat, of animal death, of the particular volatile compounds that arise from protein decomposition in warm conditions. It smells, in other words, exactly like what it is trying to attract. Not bees, not moths, flies and beetles that breed in carrion, that lay their eggs in dead flesh, that have evolved to find that smell not repellent, but deeply, urgently attractive. They arrive from considerable distances, drawn by heat and sent together, crawling into the shelter of the spather and down to the base where the flowers wait. They spend the night there, trapped and confused, traveling between the male and female flowers, performing their work without understanding it. And by morning the spather begins to wilt, the trap opens, and the insects escape carrying pollen to the next dragon arum they will be fooled by. The dragon arum feels nothing about this. It does not know it is extraordinary. It is simply doing what its ancestors did, in the same rocky hills, under the same Mediterranean sun, for millions of years before anyone was watching. The corpse flower family represents this strategy taken to its grandest possible expression. Amorphophallus titanum, the titan arum, spends most of its life as a single enormous leaf, sometimes 12 feet tall, rising from a corm that can weigh over 200 pounds, feeding the underground store that will eventually, after years of accumulation, produce the largest unbranched inflorescence in the plant kingdom. The whole structure, when it finally blooms, can reach 10 feet or more in height. It opens, like the dragon arum, by heating itself, raising the temperature of the spadix to approximate the warmth of a large mammal's body, and releasing an extraordinary chemical cocktail that botanists have described as a combination of rotting fish, old cheese, and decaying flesh, laced with a sweet top note that the plant produces early in the evening to attract beetles before the main scent event begins. It blooms for perhaps 48 hours. It may not bloom again for another 7 to 10 years. When a titan arum blooms in a botanical garden, the queue of visitors stretching around the building and down the street can number in the thousands. People travel from across a country to stand briefly in front of a flower that smells of death. And they do so willingly, cheerfully, because there is something thrilling about the sheer improbable scale of it, the audacity of a plant that has been saving itself for a decade for this 2-day performance. In the same forests of Sumatra, where the titan arum grows, the fungi that inhabit the deep leaf litter of the forest floor sometimes produce their own faint light. Bioluminescent fungi, glowing green or blue-white in the dark understory, are found in the humid tropics of Southeast Asia, the Americas, and Japan. They produce light through a chemical reaction involving a compound called luciferin, and the purpose is still debated. Some researchers believe the light attracts insects that help disperse spores. Others suggest it is a byproduct of metabolic processes, with no function beyond its own coincidental beauty. Whatever its purpose, the effect of walking through a tropical forest at night and finding the fallen logs and root systems glowing with their own cold light is one that people who have witnessed it tend to describe in the same few words. Otherworldly, dreamlike, like standing inside something that is more than it appears. And then, in the rainforests of Southeast Asia, on the roots of a particular genus of vine, there grows the most improbable flower of this entire strange family. Rafflesia is a parasite so complete that it has no stem, no leaves, no roots of its own, no chlorophyll, no capacity for photosynthesis. It exists entirely within the tissues of its host vine, invisible except as a subtle swelling on the root, until the moment when it flowers. The bud takes 9 months to develop. When it finally opens, the flower that emerges is the largest individual flower in the world, sometimes 3 feet across, its 5 thick petals the color of brick and rust, mottled with pale spots, rising from a central cup that may contain up to 7 liters of fluid. It smells of decay. It heats itself to attract flies. It lasts perhaps 5 to 7 days before collapsing into a black, unrecognizable mass that returns to the forest floor. But in those days, in the green interior of the forest, something about the Rafflesia arrests every person who encounters it. It is too large, too strange, too committed to its own peculiar vision of what a flower should be. It has shed every attribute we associate with floweredness except the essential one, the act of blooming. And in doing so it has become something that expands the idea of what life is permitted to look like. Standing before a Rafflesia, even in photographs, even in description, there is a sense of the possible widening, of the boundary of the ordinary being pushed back, of the world being, quietly and definitively, stranger and richer than you had previously understood. The world of flowers is not only ancient and strange and predatory and dazzling, it is also, in our time, quietly diminishing. There are flowers that exist now in ones and twos and small lonely populations, their future dependent on the decisions we make and the attention we choose to pay. They are not dramatic in their fragility. They do not announce their rarity. They simply bloom, with the same unhurried completeness that all flowers bring to blooming, and wait for a world that increasingly does not have room for them. The middle mist camellia is known from exactly 2 specimens. One grows in a garden in the United Kingdom. One grows in New Zealand. Somewhere in its native China, it may still exist in the wild, but no confirmed wild population has been found. The flower was brought to England in 1804 by John Middlemist, a nurseryman who collected it in China, and could not have known that he was carrying one of the last living examples of a species whose wild range would subsequently vanish entirely. It blooms in spring, a deep rose pink, its petals arranged in the loose, layered spiral of a classic camellia, and it is in every external way unremarkable compared to the dozens of camellia species cultivated in gardens around the world. If you saw it without knowing its story, you might walk past it. It is only when you know that you are looking at one of 2 remaining individuals of a species that the flower becomes difficult to look away from. The pink deepens somehow. The petals hold the light differently. You find yourself looking at it the way you might look at a face you are trying to memorize before a long goodbye. The cockerbeak vine of New Zealand was once common enough in the forests of the North Island that early Maori called it Kowaiangutacocker, the flower shaped like the beak of the cocker parrot, which is exactly what it looks like. Its flowers hang in clusters of deep crimson, curved and pointed, each one a precise replica of the hooked bill of the bird that pollinates it. By the late 20th century, it had been reduced to fewer than 200 individuals in the wild, its forest habitat cleared, and its populations grazed by introduced deer and possums. Those 200 plants still bloom each spring, still holding their crimson clusters out to a world that has grown considerably more dangerous for them than it was a few centuries ago. Intensive conservation work has brought their numbers cautiously upward, but the cockerbeak remains one of New Zealand's most endangered plants, its future uncertain, its present still offering something that stops visitors in their tracks. That particular red, that particular curve, that echo of the bird's beak in the language of the petal. The parrot's beak lotus is another creature of fire colors and near extinction. Its flowers are orange and red, deeply curved, shaped again with that avian echo that appears in so many island flowers evolved around specific bird pollinators, and it was believed for most of the 20th century to be extinct in the wild. It survived in botanical garden collections, maintained by the care of horticulturalists who grew it from seed and cutting, passing it forward through decades of cultivation while its native Canary Islands habitat continued to change. Then, in the early 2000s, a small wild population was found on the island of Lanzarote, a remnant, hidden, surviving. It was, for the botanists who found it, one of those rare moments when the feared ending turns out not to have happened yet, when the door that seemed closed turns out to be merely difficult to open. The parrot's beak lotus is still critically endangered, but it is there, still flowering in the volcanic soil of an island in the Atlantic, still orange and curved and alive. The black bat flower does not look like something that should exist in the same world as camellias and lotuses, and the quiet pink of the middle mist camellia. Its flowers are extraordinary, dark purple to near black, with long, dangling whiskers that can reach 30 centimeters in length and wide lateral bracts that spread like wings, like the outstretched membranes of a bat hanging in the dark of its roost. It grows in the tropical forests of Southeast Asia and is pollinated by the same bats whose form it so eerily mirrors. It is not technically endangered in the way the cockabeak is endangered, but its forest habitat is under constant pressure, and its combination of high altitude preference and specific pollinator requirements makes it vulnerable in ways that numbers alone do not capture. To see a black bat flower in bloom is to feel that you are looking at something that belongs to a different world, a world of greater darkness and strangeness than the one outside the greenhouse door. It holds its whiskers out into the air with a kind of languid, indifferent drama, as though it knows it is remarkable and has made a complete peace with that knowledge. Rochelle's false bladder pod is known from a single hillside in South Africa. A single hillside on a single mountain in the Cape Floristic region, which is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, home to nearly 10,000 plant species, many of them found nowhere else. The false bladder pod produces small yellow flowers above its inflated seed pods, modest and quiet in the way that many of the rarest plants are quiet, making no special announcement of their scarcity. It is precisely this lack of drama that makes the story of these rare plants so quietly heartbreaking. They are not calling out. They are not marking themselves for attention. They are simply doing what plants do, flowering and fruiting and trying to persist on one hillside, in one small population, against odds that grow longer every year. And then there is the chocolate cosmos, and it deserves a moment of its own. The chocolate cosmos is extinct in the wild. It has been extinct in Mexico, where it was native, since the early 20th century. It survives only in cultivation, a single sterile clone propagated vegetatively since it was last collected, unable to produce viable seed, maintained purely through the deliberate intervention of human care. Its flowers are a deep mahogany brown, almost the color of dark chocolate, held on slender stems above fine foliage, and they have a fragrance that has been described, by those who kneel close enough to catch it, as warm and sweet, reminiscent of vanilla, of cocoa, of something that makes the mind move toward comfort and warmth, and the particular softness of late afternoons in summer. It blooms every year, this single sterile clone, in gardens and botanical collections around the world, producing its dark, beautiful flowers with the same completeness and apparent purpose as any flower in full possession of its future. It does not know it is the last. It does not know anything except the instructions it has been following since before it had a name. There is a sadness in the chocolate cosmos, but there is also, if you choose to see it this way, something that resembles grace. It continues to bloom. It continues to offer its vanilla warmth and its extraordinary color to the air around it, asking nothing, expecting nothing, simply being, as perfectly and as fully as it ever was, the last one left. We are nearly at the end of our long night journey through the living world. The stars, wherever you are, have moved across the sky while we have been traveling together, down through roots and up through canopies, across deserts and along ocean shores, into the dark hearts of forest floors and out again into the moonlit gardens where white flowers open to the cooling air. We have moved slowly, the way the best journeys move, at the pace of something being fully attended to, and now we are arriving at the last chapter, the final flowers, the ones that gather the whole story into themselves and hold it like light held in water, clear and still. The ghost orchid grows in the cypress swamps of Florida and Cuba, And it is, by most accounts, the most difficult wild orchid in North America to find. It has no leaves. It produces no chlorophyll. It exists as a pale tracery of green roots pressed against the bark of pond apple and pop ash trees in the deep swamp, invisible until it blooms, which it may do only once every few years, without any apparent regularity or predictability. The flowers, when they appear, are white, spider-like, their petals and sepals long and narrow, spreading in all directions from a central lip that is ruffled and faintly striped. They float on thin leafless stems above the root mat, appearing to hover in the dim swamp air with nothing supporting them, which is why the early naturalists who described them reached for the word ghost. There is something genuinely apparitional about them, something of the quality of a face seen in fog, present, and then not, real but barely. The ghost orchid is pollinated only by the giant sphinx moth, whose proboscis is long enough to reach the nectar at the base of the long floral tube. The moth and the orchid have evolved together, each requiring the other, each the completion of something the other began. On the nights when the ghost orchid blooms and the giant sphinx moth comes, in the deep and breathing dark of the Florida swamp, they find each other. No one sees it. The swamp holds the meeting in its own keeping, in water and dark and the voices of frogs, and the orchid closes before morning as though it was never open. The jade vine of the Philippines grows its flowers in long, cascading clusters that hang from the canopy like bunches of extraordinary fruit, each individual flower a hooked claw of the most astonishing color, a blue-green turquoise that has no common equivalent in the plant kingdom, the color of shallow tropical water over white sand, of glass in sunlight, of a gemstone lit from within. Jade vine flowers are pollinated by bats, which hang upside down from the clusters to drink the nectar, and they are most vivid in the low light of dawn and dusk, which is when the bats are active. The color seems to intensify in that particular quality of transitional light, to glow with something beyond reflectance, as though the flower is generating its own luminosity from somewhere inside the petals. The jade vine is endangered in the wild, its Philippine forest habitat reduced to fragments. But in the botanical gardens of the world that cultivate it, it blooms reliably, its cascades of blue-green hanging in greenhouse light, stopping people mid-step, making them reach for their phones, and then put their phones away again, because some colors cannot be captured. Some things need to be stood in front of, breathed with, held in the eyes without mediation. Frangipani does not ask to be the last thing in anyone's memory of an evening. It simply is. In the warm latitudes of the world, from the Caribbean to Southeast Asia to the gardens of the Pacific Islands, it grows in trees of remarkable ease, the branches thick and soft and flowering at their tips with clusters of 5-petaled blooms in white and yellow and pink and coral. Each flower built around a simple spiral, each one releasing a fragrance that has entered the memory of every person who has encountered it in the right place, at the right time, which is usually the tropics, and the evening, and somewhere near water or open air. The fragrance of frangipani at dusk is one of those sensory experiences that the mind stores differently from ordinary information. It does not stay in the category of fact. It goes somewhere else, somewhere closer to the body, closer to feeling, and years later, encountered again in a different garden in a different country, it retrieves everything at once: the evening, the warmth, the quality of the light, the specific texture of that particular moment of being alive. The flowers fall from the tree overnight, accumulating on the ground beneath in soft drifts of white and cream, and in the morning the path below a frangipani tree is carpeted in fallen petals, each one still fragrant, still intact, still carrying its spiral and its color with it as it rests on the earth. And last, and perhaps most fitting, there is the flame lily. Gloriosa superba, the flame lily, climbs through the grasslands and open forests of Africa and Asia on scrambling stems, using its own leaf-tipped tendrils to grip whatever it can find, hauling itself upward toward the light. Its flowers are unlike any other lilies, the petals swept dramatically upward and backward, like flames caught in a sudden updraft, and they emerge in a gradient of color that begins yellow-green at the base and deepens through orange to a burning scarlet at the tips, so that each flower looks like a small fire held perfectly still, suspended at the moment of its most intense combustion. The stamens extend outward in every direction, long and golden, and the whole flower has an energy to it, a sense of arrested motion, as though it is always on the verge of movement, always about to do something dramatic, and has chosen, at the last moment, to simply remain. It grows in the cracks between rocks, along roadsides, through the thorny scrub of dry African savanna, and it climbs whatever it finds, the grasses, the shrubs, the fences, with a cheerful opportunism that makes it seem less like a rare wildflower and more like a force of nature that happens to have petals. It blooms in summer, the flame colors of its flowers visible from a considerable distance. And in a hedgerow or a rough field edge, it has the quality of a small fire someone has left burning, attended and unattended all at once, going about its own bright business in the ordinary world. And so we rest here, at the end of this long and living journey, with the flame lily's colors fading gently in the imagination, and the frangipani's perfume still faintly present in the air, and all the slow and patient and extraordinary things we have traveled through tonight settling into something quiet and whole. What the living world asks of us, in the end, is very simple. It asks for attention. Not analysis, not management, not intervention, though all of those have their place. Just attention. The willingness to sit with a forest for long enough to feel the conversation happening beneath our feet. To stand before a flower that blooms once a decade and understand that its timing has nothing to do with us, and that this, somehow, is a relief. To know that there are bristlecone pines older than written history still standing on their cold ridgelines, still adding their hair's width of new wood each year, still entirely indifferent to our urgency, and to let that indifference be a kind of comfort. We have traveled far tonight, from the cloud-piercing silence of the ancient redwoods to the dark swamp where the ghost orchid floats on nothing, from the underground conversations of fungi to the single-night burning of the desert Sirius, from the chocolate cosmos flowering in its cultivated solitude to the jade vine's impossible color held in the light of a Philippine dawn. All of this is happening, somewhere, right now while you rest. The mycorrhizal networks are exchanging their chemical sentences in the dark. The moonflower is opening on its trellis. The Titanarum is building its slow charge toward a bloom that is still years away. The world is continuing its ancient, intricate, unhurried work, and it does not need you to watch. But it is there if you choose to look. It is always quietly there. Sleep now. Let the flowers go on without you. They know what they are doing. Good night, and have a great, relaxing sleep.